Well, it's certainly lovely to be back here. I've spent many hours sitting in this auditorium, and it's great to see old faces, but it's especially great to see new faces too. So I'd just like to firstly bring greetings from Shaw Presbyterian. We very much feel a part of this church because we were born out of this church, so greetings and love from Shaw Presbyterian. Thank you for the opportunity to just share a little bit about a trip that Kathy and I and Thomas and Louise, I see Louise is here this morning. We did a trip a couple of months ago now over to Japan. The purpose of the trip was really to see Adamancy and Esther and their little baby Katoki. And so we thought it was a good opportunity just to come and to share and give a bit of an update about how they're doing and what they're doing, as Adamancy's really entered a very important phase of his life, which I'll explain very shortly. They were in Sendai, ministering or part of a ministry to tsunami victims on the coast. And about a year ago, even though Adamancy for many years had said he didn't think he was ever going to be called to be a pastor, he felt the calling to go and to train. So in April, they moved up to Sapporo, which is in the northern island of Hokkaido in Japan. It's a very lovely city, and that's just a view of the centre part of the city. And under that greenery is a huge shopping mall, underground shopping mall. It's a very nice city to visit. Japan, just a few facts and figures about Japan and the state of it, 127 million people, and it's got 0.5% evangelical Christians. I think that's a fairly optimistic number. It's really a very needy country, a very unreached country. One of the things here, you'll see pastors, average age 50, 70%. They have a real need for pastors. It's one of the main concerns, I guess, of the church in Japan, just the lack of pastors and the lack of young men going into training. So that is a real dire need for the church. As it says there, the major challenge for the Japanese church today is aging pastors with few or no successors. It is said that the average age of all Japanese pastors is between 60 and 70 years of age, and I believe it's the upper end of that, perhaps 68, I think. I've heard the figures. Since many of them are now retiring, the number of churches without pastors is increasing, and there are fewer young people willing to take the challenge of becoming pastors. Bible schools are closing due to lack of students. There is a great need to encourage and mobilise young Christians to be involved in ministry. Japan's the second largest unreached people group in the world today. And it's a very strategic part of Asia, and it's felt that a strong church in Japan would be a tremendous benefit to missions in the Asian region. And there's just a few facts and figures about some of our contacts. The Seckhams are presently on furlough in UK. I'll speak briefly about them later on. Martin and Ruth Gent, which some of you know, I'll speak very briefly about them as well. Adamancy and Esther Nishimura and Katoki were in Sendai, now in Sapporo. Rod and Glenda Thomas is in Sendai. He's the pastor that heads up the ministry in Sendai and was Adamancy's pastor. And the OMF headquarters in Ichikawa. Some of us will know those areas very well. Just a little bit about Adamancy. How many here know Adamancy? Perhaps 50%? Yeah, there's quite a few that don't. In 2003, he became a Christian. His parents are Christians. He He'd sort of gone off the rails, he admit that, and he had quite a serious traffic accident. And he came back home and started going to church and became a Christian. His pastor contacted us to see if we could look after him for a year, which he did. He thought it was a good idea to get him out of the environment. He came and studied English and got involved in the church down here, returned back to Japan for a while, and then we encouraged him to come back and study at Grace College, which he did in 2008. He came for 1 year but stayed 3. He graduated and returned back to Japan about 6 weeks before the tsunami. He got a job just in the government office, not quite sure what he was going to do, but as soon as the tsunami hit, there was a great deal of work needed to be done by the church in Japan. So he became involved and became the evangelist in the Sendai church under Rod Thomas. They bought a house on the coast, he didn't, but the church did, and that was set up as a mission station. 2014, he married Esther, and just this year, as I said, he became, he's gone into training to become a pastor, which is a 3-year course in the Hokkaido Bible College in Sapporo. I've highlighted that the Gamo mission station, that's where he was. It's a ministry of the South, the Sendai Evangelical Christian Church. And they're looking for someone to continue the ministry that Adamancy began. It's a very important ministry. They've got many contacts from the tsunami victims. So that's something we can pray about, that there will be a replacement for Adamancy and Esther. And in the meantime, the work continues in that ministry. That's the Bible Institute that he's going to in Sapporo. You see, there's 9 or 10 young men in the early 20s. So Adamancy's in his mid-40s, so he's the only married man and a bit older with a child. And when they go there, the Bible Institute attaches them to various different churches so that they can become involved in those churches. The church that they're in, I believe Esther's made one good friend, and we pray that she'll continue to do that. There's also a New Zealand family up there training at the college, not in his class, but at the same college. Right, there's some photos you've all been waiting for with Esther, Adamancy and Katoki. So Katoki was born in the 3rd of October last year, so that makes him 9 months, is it? 10 months? He's a happy little boy. Looks like he's poking tongues at someone there. And there he is in his pram. And there he is again with Esther and Kathy. And once again, there he is with Louise and Thomas. We were in, was it Dunkin' Donuts? Some donut place. And he's swatting his Greek, I think it was. He had a test the next morning, so Louise was busy testing him on that. And there's another photo. Unfortunately, the time we spent with him was far too short, but it was great. That's him just ready to get on the train to go home that night. It was a cold night in Sendai. Now that's a video. Okay.
Thank you so much for everything. I miss you guys. One day we will go there together with my wife and son.
may not remember in Kelly. You probably don't know. An older lady, older than me, that used to come by herself because when you were kind of blonde
I don't know if you remember before we went, there was a card handed out, and many of you signed that card. So he was just thanking you for the card. Also, there was a lovely quilt that we took up that was made by someone here, and some gifts. So they really do appreciate the support, the prayers, and the support that they get from this church. And the volume is a little bit low, but he was saying that, thanking you and saying that he really wants to come and visit down here, and that'll be presumably after he's graduated from the college. Just some prayer points. Pray for Adamancy's studies. He's studying long hours, and particularly this month he's got final exam for this semester this week, I think this coming week. He's finding it particularly challenging studying Greek and Hebrew. Pray for quality family time because he's got a very heavy workload. He leaves early in the morning and gets home quite late at night. So Esther is getting Katoki up at 5:30 in the morning so he can spend time with Adamancy, and she baths him, and Adamancy obviously plays with him for a little while before he goes off to college. We can pray for Esther that she will be able to settle down in Sapporo, away from her family. Her family, her father's a pastor just north of Tokyo. He's actually from Taiwan, and he leads a church there that ministers to a lot of university students, particularly from the Philippines. So she's away from her family. It's a very close-knit family. So pray that she'll meet and make good friends in the new city. And we can give thanks that she's a wonderful support for Adamancy. She's very organised, which probably Adamancy probably needs a little bit of that. And just pray for continued support over the next 2.5 years. Japan's an expensive country to live in, and while he was in Sendai, he wasn't on a huge salary. So we can just pray for some of those things. And afterwards, if any questions you want to ask, I'll be more than glad to tell you a bit more about Adamancy. While we're there, the second to last day, we caught up with Martin Seckham. Some of you here will know he's sent over to Japan from this church, and you're one of his main supporters. And he was just visiting, a quick visit to do checkups. He was there about a week and a half, so we spent an hour or so with him the evening before he flew out. What is happening with them is they're flying out. They've booked their tickets. They're returning back to. I've got an email just came through from them. They're going back to Japan as a family. They've booked the flights on the 7th of July, and they return back on the 21st of July. So they're on their way. Just a couple of things. They've put their applications in for visas, but they haven't heard back. So they're praying that that'll happen before they return back to Japan. Pray for the right place to live in Hiragashi, which is a new area of Sapporo they're going to be ministering in. Pray for their support levels is down a little bit. It's not quite 100%, but they're returning back anyway. And pray for the ministry in Sonning Common and for a continuation of their ministry that they began or were involved in. Pray that it'll grow and for more workers to take over. Just for those, just realise that probably quite a few don't know much about the Seckhams. He's a doctor, so he's the medical associate for OMF in Japan, and they've been over there since I should know, about 8 years anyway. And part of their support, a large part of support comes from England, where he's from. His wife's New Zealander. So they went back for 1 year to be involved in a church plant at Sonning Crescent. That 1 year became 2 because of the children and their education. So they're about to return. They're leaving one behind, their eldest Rafi, who will be starting university next year. He's having a gap year before that, so they're leaving him behind in Japan. But the other 4 children, Elijah, Georgia, and Talitha, are all returning back to Japan. So continue to pray for them and their ministry as they return back, and especially that they'll settle back into ministry once they get back there. And just finally, Martin and Ruth Gent, once again, some of you will know them. They've visited here twice. They've led our the missions committee the missions week here. One visit, and the other one they were guest speakers at the family camp. And 6 teams have gone from here, and they've been really the main focus of our ministry up in Japan. They're church planting in rural Japan in South Hirosaki, and they've been there for 30 odd years, and they've just started this new church plant a couple of years ago, and it's growing. They're having converts and baptising new believers, which is great news. And they're going to come and visit us early in the new year. They haven't got a date yet, but no doubt they'll come along and speak to you. So there's quite a bit we can pray for. And as I say, if there's any questions, please come and see me afterwards, and I'll be only too glad to talk more about these folk. Thank you.